Every civilization leaves a door someone forgot to open. This is case file number 11. Off the western coast of Pohnpei in Micronesia lies Nan Madol, a sprawling urban landscape that defies conventional expectations for an ancient settlement dating back nearly 1,000 years. It was constructed not on solid bedrock, but upon a shallow coral reef lagoon where seawater laps just meters below the surface today. Here stands a city composed of nearly 100 artificial islets, each defined by towering walls made from massive basalt columns that were transported and stacked with an engineering precision still debated by modern geologists. The sheer volume of stone moved to create these islands remains staggering when compared to contemporary construction methods available during its supposed occupation by the Saudeleur dynasty. The layout suggests a complex political structure rather than a simple village, featuring distinct residential areas separated from ceremonial platforms and royal tombs arranged around central plazas. These islets are connected only by narrow causeways that would have required careful navigation for canoes carrying goods or people during high tide, effectively isolating specific districts within the greater complex. The basalt columns themselves were likely quarried on land nearby before being dragged across mudflats and positioned into vertical stacks that reach heights of up to 6 meters in some locations. Some researchers speculate that the sheer logistical effort required implies a highly centralized authority capable of mobilizing vast labor forces. Yet no definitive written records from the Saudeleur period survive to fully explain how such organization was maintained without modern machinery or known ancient technologies. Today, the site stands as a haunting testament to a culture that flourished and then seemingly vanished within a single generation, leaving behind structures now reclaimed by lush tropical vegetation and crashing waves. The erosion of limestone foundations beneath the basalt piles has caused some walls to collapse into the lagoon, altering the original geometry while simultaneously preserving parts of the architecture underwater for future investigation. While local oral traditions speak of powerful sorcerers living within the tombs at nightfall, scientific analysis focuses instead on environmental factors like rising sea levels and disease as potential catalysts for the abandonment of this incredible urban center. The silence that fills Nan Madol today is not empty. It carries the weight of a mystery where history meets legend in an underwater graveyard waiting to be fully understood by those willing to listen closely to what remains submerged beneath Micronesia's turquoise waters. When you first approach Nan Madol from a distance, the sheer physical scale of the settlement becomes immediately apparent against the dark waters of Pohnpei's lagoon. It is not merely a village built on land, but an entire city constructed entirely upon the sea itself, rising up in clusters of artificial islands that defy simple geographical logic. These distinct basalt platforms are connected by a complex network of tidal canals and moats, creating a labyrinthine waterway system that has earned this ancient site its enduring nickname, the Venice of the Pacific. The density of these structures is staggering, with thousands of separate foundations packed tightly together to form urban centers where no natural soil ever existed before human hands reshaped the landscape. The materials required to build such an expanse are even more perplexing than their placement, as geological surveys reveal a composition that does not match the local environment. The city stands upon jagged columns and massive walls hewn from basalt rock. Yet this specific type of stone is virtually absent on the small atolls where Nan Madol sits today. Scientists estimate that over 750,000 metric tons of this heavy volcanic rock were transported to these isolated foundations, a logistical feat that remains difficult to reconcile with our current understanding of pre-modern engineering capabilities in Micronesia. The sheer volume suggests a centralized labor force capable of quarrying and moving massive stones across open water without the benefit of modern machinery or known road networks, raising fundamental questions about how such weight was lifted and shifted into place centuries ago. Despite decades of archaeological study and careful excavation by international teams, many aspects of this construction remain obscured by silence rather than answered by evidence. Researchers have documented tool marks on some stones that suggest they were cut locally elsewhere in the island group before being dragged across waterways to their final destinations. Yet the method for transporting such immense tonnage remains largely speculative within academic circles. The lack of written records from the builders themselves forces observers to rely entirely on oral traditions and fragmented physical evidence, leaving gaps in our narrative that no amount of speculation can fill with certainty. As we stand before this sprawling complex today, it is clear that history has left behind a monumental puzzle where the solutions are hidden beneath layers of salt water and time. The foundation of Nan Madol rests upon a geological anomaly that immediately challenges our understanding of ancient engineering, massive hexagonal basalt columns rising from Pohnpei's coastal waters and inland slopes. These stones, naturally formed by volcanic activity over millennia, were not merely gathered but selected with precision for their unique geometric integrity, serving as the structural backbone for artificial islands built on fragile atolls. The sheer weight and density of these monoliths suggest a construction process that defies simple explanation, raising an immediate question regarding how such heavy materials moved from quarries often located miles away to their final resting places atop rising tides without modern machinery or pulley systems known to the era. To bring this vision into reality required moving tons of rock across open water where no bridges existed and currents could easily capsize unprepared vessels. Historical records indicate that these stones were transported by raft or canoe, a method requiring not just skill but an immense scale of coordinated labor far exceeding population estimates for early Micronesian societies. Some researchers speculate that the entire community may have been mobilized simultaneously over generations to achieve this feat, creating a logistical puzzle where thousands of hands must work in unison under harsh sun and salt spray, yet no definitive written log or oral tradition survives to describe exactly how these voyages were organized or sustained without collapsing under their own bureaucratic weight. The silence surrounding the mechanics of this transport adds an ominous layer to the mystery. There are simply too many stones for any single family group to have moved alone in a short span of time. As we look at the ruins today, standing on what was once water and seeing these massive columns locked into place with uncanny regularity, it becomes clear that the people who built them possessed knowledge or organization systems lost to history. Whether driven by spiritual necessity or political ambition remains unknown, but one fact stands verified. They solved a problem of physics and geography that still leaves modern observers wondering how the stone could have traveled so far without leaving a trace of its journey in the annals of recorded time. Imagine standing on one of Pohnpei's artificial islets today, looking at massive basalt columns that once supported a palace complex now reclaimed by nature and coral growth. Despite centuries of erosion and rising sea levels threatening the structure, these walls remain remarkably intact, defying expectations for ancient construction in such an isolated environment. The stones themselves are not native to Pohnpei. They were quarried from distant volcanic outcrops on the island's southeastern coast over 20 miles away, a journey that required transporting immense weight across rough terrain without any mechanical advantage or modern machinery. This is where the true engineering constraint becomes undeniable when we examine the tools and technology available during this era of Pacific Island history. The ancient builders possessed no iron hammers to split rock efficiently, lacked wheeled vehicles for transport over land or water, and had never domesticated large draft animals like oxen or horses to haul heavy loads. Every stone weighing up to 50 tons was moved entirely by human muscle power using sophisticated systems of rollers, levers, and coordinated labor forces that have left no physical trace in the archaeological record yet produced results far exceeding contemporary capabilities elsewhere in the world at the time. The precision achieved within these log cabin-style walls suggests a level of planning and execution that continues to confound modern observers without resorting to fantastical explanations. While some researchers speculate about advanced knowledge passed down through generations or unique hydraulic engineering techniques lost to history, there is no evidence to support extraterrestrial intervention or mythical legends often circulated in popular media. The sheer scale of this undertaking stands as a testament to human ingenuity under severe logistical constraints, raising profound questions about how such complex infrastructure was conceived and constructed without the technological frameworks we take for granted today, leaving visitors with a quiet sense that something fundamental remains unexplained by current historical understanding. Contrary to popular belief that this enigmatic site merely grew organically like a humble fishing village, archaeological evidence confirms Nan Madol was an intensely engineered administrative hub constructed with terrifying precision around 1200 CE. The layout reveals itself not as a haphazard collection of dwellings but as a deliberate political and ceremonial capital for the Saudeleur dynasty, where every raised platform served a specific function within a rigid hierarchy. These artificial islands were carved from solid bedrock to support heavy stone structures designed to house royalty rather than commoners, reflecting a society that prioritized monumental grandeur over residential comfort. The city's infrastructure was strictly zoned to separate the spheres of life, death, and spiritual authority into distinct sectors that reinforced the dynasty's absolute control. In one section stood the royal residence where high-ranking nobles lived lived in relative isolation above the waterline, while adjacent areas housed vast mortuary complexes intended for elite burials and ancestor worship rituals. Further along the labyrinthine canals sat sacred precincts reserved strictly for priestly ceremonies, creating a physical manifestation of the Saudeleur's divine right to rule that left little room for ordinary villagers or their daily necessities. Some researchers speculate that this rigid planning was necessary to project an aura of invincibility upon visiting dignitaries and rival chiefs who navigated these treacherous waterways by canoe alone. The deliberate separation of spaces suggests a society deeply concerned with maintaining social stratification, where the path to power was both literal and symbolic within the watery maze. By concentrating political authority in such a confined yet imposing environment, the Saudeleur leaders ensured that their status as God's king remained unchallenged until the mysterious collapse of their regime centuries later. For centuries, the people of Pohnpei told stories that echoed across their island homes and into the dense jungle shadows surrounding Nan Madol. The oral tradition speaks clearly of a time when the Saudeleur dynasty ruled from this sprawling complex of artificial islands with an iron grip over trade routes and sacred waters. These ancient rulers lived in isolation, protected by moat defenses and mysterious rituals that kept outsiders at bay while they hoarded wealth derived from distant voyages. However, according to these enduring legends, nothing could withstand the arrival of Isoplekal, a culture hero who emerged with weapons forged not just from iron but from an unyielding spirit of conquest. Historians listen carefully to these tales, yet they approach them with a measured skepticism rather than blind acceptance. The precise narrative of how the great city fell remains shrouded in the mists of time and local mythology. While some scholars point to evidence suggesting Isoplekal led an invading force that toppled the dynasty around 1600 CE, others argue that the story serves as a metaphorical explanation for political upheavals caused by disease or internal strife rather than a single military victory. The exact transition from Saudeleur rule to foreign domination is still debated within academic circles, leaving gaps in our historical record that oral history attempts to fill with vivid imagery of battle and betrayal. The reality likely exists somewhere between the stark facts found in archaeological layers and the dramatic flair of mythological accounts. Some researchers speculate that external pressures, perhaps from rising populations on neighboring islands or shifting climate patterns, combined to erode the Saudeleur power structure long before a final defeat occurred. It is probable that Isoplekal represents not just one individual warrior, but a collective shift in cultural dominance where new groups overwhelmed an isolated elite class. As we stand today amidst the ruins of broken palaces and submerged foundations, we must acknowledge that while the grand narrative may be legend, it stands as a testament to how quickly empires can crumble when their insular world collides with forces they could not control or comprehend. Now, the part historians won't confirm. Here's what if we are looking at a logistical miracle that defies our current understanding of pre-colonial engineering, specifically regarding the transportation and placement of hundreds of thousands of tons of basalt across open water without modern machinery or deep-draft ocean-going vessels capable of such tasks under similar conditions. The sheer scale required to construct Nan Madol suggests a level of maritime proficiency that was not only unique, but perhaps singular in its entirety within the broader context of Pacific navigation history, creating an anomaly where standard models simply do not apply. Some researchers speculate that this project demanded a specific, localized knowledge base regarding tidal currents and wave dynamics that allowed builders to manipulate massive stone blocks with impossible precision using methods now considered lost or entirely forgotten by contemporary anthropology. If true, the organization required would have been nothing less than an absolute monopoly on advanced seafaring technology restricted strictly to Pohnpei's royal lineage, implying a closed system of innovation that never diffused outward but instead vanished entirely alongside the dynasty responsible for its creation once political instability struck this isolated kingdom centuries ago. The ominous reality remains that we may be observing evidence of a specialized civilization whose peak capability was extinguished without leaving behind written records or surviving technical manuals to explain how they achieved such feats, effectively erasing their unique logistical genius from our historical record overnight. This leaves us with the unsettling possibility that Nan Madol stands as the final testament to a era of mirror than dominance, where human ingenuity reached heights we can no longer replicate because the specific cultural and evidence as to its existence sees lumber for any outsider could document with them, leaving only silence, stones witty of explanation that may never come. Despite decades of exploration and excavation efforts by Pacific archaeologists and international teams, significant portions of Nan Madol remain stubbornly hidden from view. Much of the ancient site lies submerged beneath the tide's relentless reach, while other sections are swallowed by dense vegetation or buried under centuries of coral rubble. This incomplete archaeological record means that our current understanding is merely a fragmentary sketch rather than a finished portrait. The precise timeline for its construction continues to be debated, with some researchers suggesting it was built in fits and starts over several hundred years, while others argue for a single period of intense labor followed by rapid decline. Without access to the full extent of the city's foundations or its original ceremonial complexes, historians can only piece together likely scenarios rather than definitive histories. The lack of contemporary written records from the Saudeleur dynasty further complicates efforts to reconstruct daily life and political structure within this artificial metropolis. Oral traditions persist among local communities, yet translating these stories into concrete historical data remains a challenging endeavor due to shifting cultural contexts over time. Some scholars speculate that the sheer scale of moving massive basalt boulders across open lagoons defies simple explanation without advanced engineering knowledge or immense organizational capacity lost to history. Yet, even with modern technology allowing us to map submerged structures using sonar and satellite imagery, new mysteries emerge instead of resolving old ones. Each cleared path in the jungle reveals not just a building, but questions about who lived there, how they organized themselves, and why such an ambitious project was undertaken in isolation from continental civilizations. But case file number 11 wasn't the strangest door we found. Case file number 12 is about a stone city in Africa that European explorers refused to believe local hands had built. Some say it shouldn't be opened at all.